So let's first install Windows Server 2019, which is going to be our domain controller. So let's go ahead and click on Create a New Virtual Machine. And yes, you are reading this correctly. Hannah Montana does have a version of Linux that we were playing around with on a stream, so that's the last thing that I installed on this computer. Go ahead and go to Browse, and then here, go ahead and select your ISO. So I'm selecting my server eval ISO right here. Go ahead and double click that, and it says Windows Server 2016 is detected. Not exactly accurate, but that's okay. We're gonna go ahead and hit next. And it says, what do you want to install? 2016 Data Center or Standard? We're gonna go ahead and just say Standard. And now the rest of this, you can go ahead and leave blank. We don't need a product key because this is eval, and you won't need a password either. Go ahead and select next. It's going to prompt you and say you didn't enter a product key. We're gonna say yes, we want to continue. And then go ahead and choose where you want this virtual machine to store. I'm gonna go ahead and just let this store on my actual C drive here, and I'm gonna hit next. And then it's gonna ask you how much file size you want for this. So I'm gonna go ahead and just say 60 gigabytes and split the disk into multiple files. This is not going to take up 60 gigs. It's probably gonna take up somewhere around 10 to 20. Once we have all three machines, we'll probably take up 60 gigs in total. So we're just gonna go ahead and hit next on this. And then at this last step here, go ahead and select power on this virtual machine after creation. Make sure that's unchecked. And then hit finish. And now we have our Windows Server 2016. We're gonna go ahead and select Edit Virtual Machine Settings. And in here, we have this floppy drive. We wanna make sure this floppy drive is removed. You see this using auto install. If we don't remove this, it's gonna try to install this weird file. It's gonna ask for a key. It's just not gonna work for us. So let's go ahead and just remove that completely. Now, we're going to use a NATed network for this. So go ahead and just say use to share the host IP. We're select NAT. On the memory side, go ahead and select 2 gigs of memory. If you have it, you could select a little bit more. Say you're running 32 gigs, for example, you could select more, but go ahead and just use your 2 gigs. So let's actually pause here with a small update. Now I said 2 gigs was fine, and it probably is, but we've noticed with our student lab builds that 2 gigabytes can tend to slow things down just a bit when we're installing and doing the setup. So we highly recommend that you set this to 4 gigs here. And then if you need to revert because you don't have as much RAM, revert back to 2 gigs once you have the domain controller installed. And the same goes for setting up the user machines in the next video. Use 4 gigs, then you can turn it off, set it to 2 gigs, and then reboot the machine. And we're gonna go ahead and just say okay here. Now from here, go ahead and select play virtual machine and have your fingers ready, click in it, and it's gonna say press any key, press any key. So make sure you do it really quick and get it to boot, otherwise it's gonna go into this funky thing and it's not gonna work for you. So make sure you press any key. This is gonna spin up really quick. And then we're gonna go ahead and enter some information here. So your install should look like this. It should say Windows Server 2019, and then go ahead and select your languages. I'm gonna be using English United States for all of this. And I'm gonna hit next. And then I'm gonna select install now. And it's going to start bringing up this setup. So for the magic of video, I'm going to pause in between on these recordings, and then I'm going to let them finish, and then we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one. So from here, let's go ahead and select Windows Server 2019 Standard Evaluation, this desktop experience. And we're going to select Next. And then once this starts installing, I'll go ahead and pause. I accept the license terms. Hit next. We're going to select custom install down here. And we have drive 0 unallocated space. Go ahead and select new. And then we're going to hit apply and say okay. And you're going to see that it creates a bunch of different partitions for us. And really we only have a little bit here that we need for actually installing, and then the rest is going to be free space when we need it. So let's go ahead and hit next. And now this is going to take a little bit of time to install. So go ahead and let yours install, and then meet me back when you're ready for the rest of the steps. Okay, your computer should have restarted and brought you to a screen that looks like this, where it says Customize Settings. So here we have an administrator user, and we're going to need to enter a password in. So I'm going to be entering in a password of password, but it's going to be a capital P, and then it's going to be the @ symbol, $2, a lowercase w, a 0, RD exclamation. And let me show you what that looks like in a notepad. It looks just like that. You can put any password you want here, but this is what I'm going to be using for this course. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in one more time. And go ahead and hit finish. And now it's finalizing our settings. We have this Control-Alt-Delete to unlock. So to do that, go ahead and just come up here, send Control-Alt-Delete, and then log in with your new password. And now it's going to load up your profile, and this may take just a second to get ready. Okay, so from here, we're going to click this full screen. You're going to see that we're not full screening. So we're going to have an issue with full screen. What we're going to need to do is to install our tools here. So we have tools that we can install. If we go to Manage and say Install VMware Tools, click on that and select Install. This is going to allow us to actually have a full screen on this machine. So now it has popped up and said DVD drive, VMware Tools, select what happens. Let's go ahead and just click on it and say run setup64.exe. This is going to run the installation, and then we're going to need to reboot afterwards. So from here, hit next. We'll do a complete install. Next. And install. Okay, and you can see that it's already made it full screen for you. And it says you can restart your system. And we'll just go ahead and say no, we plan to manually restart. There's a few more things I want to take care of, or at least one. So let's go to the start menu. And we're going to type in computer. And it says view your PC name right here. Go ahead and select view your PC name. And we select rename this PC right here. And now name this what you want to name your PC. So this is the domain controller. I'm going to name it something that is significant, that, resembles a domain controller. So for this, I'm just going to name this Hydra-DC. Now my theme is going to be a Marvel theme. I kind of like Marvel comics type stuff. So I'm going to make this a Marvel themed domain controller. You can make this whatever you want. So you can just make this my domain controller if you want. But I'm just putting in here Hydra-DC, and then I'm going to say next. And it's going to prompt you to restart your computer now or restart it later. Go ahead and hit restart now. And we'll just say other unplanned is fine. Hit continue. Let this restart. Okay, so you should be taken to a login screen now. So go ahead and hit Control-Alt-Delete again. Go ahead and put in your password up here. And you should sign in. Now, every time that you load on a server like this, you're going to get this server manager that pops up. And we're going to go ahead and work on installing a domain controller here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to Manage. And we're going to say add roles and features up here. And we're going to go ahead and just select next here. Role-based or feature-based installation. We're going to select next again. And then the server role that we want to add, we're going to go ahead and say Active Directory Domain Services right here. So remember, ADDS, you saw that a bunch of times. This is exactly what it is. Go ahead and say add features. Select next. select next, next, and then we're going to say install. And go ahead and let this install. Once this is completely installed, go ahead and unpause your video and meet me back here, and we'll focus on the rest. All right, now your feature installation should be complete. Go ahead and hit close. You can see we've got this little alert up here. Let's go ahead and click on this flag. And you see it says promote the server to a domain controller. So we haven't done that yet. Let's go ahead and do that. And now it's going to ask us for some information. So it's going to say, how do we want to deploy this? And we're going to say, let's go ahead and just add a new forest. And what do we want to call this root domain name? So I'm going to call this marvel.local. So go ahead and give it something to that effect. Whatever you're going to call your domain, give it that and then a .local. So we're just saying .local instead of .com or .org. Whatever you want your domain name to be. So for me, again, marvel.local. Go ahead and select next. And this might just take a minute. Okay, from here, we're going to go ahead and give this a password. Whatever password we want for this directory services restore mode. You can make it the same thing like password. I'm just going to do that. And then go ahead and hit next. And we're going to select next for this. This will take a second, and then once it loads, it should populate your marvel.local name here. Okay, go ahead and select next. Okay, now you're brought to this path screen. And remember, again, the NTDS comes up here and it says, hey, where do you want to select your database, log files, etc. Remember, we saw the NTDS in the beginning. Just remember this again. Here you go for your database folder, your log folders, and then we'll talk about what the sysvol is a little bit later. Let's go ahead and hit next. We'll hit next here again. And this section may take another second or two to load. Go ahead and pause if you need to. Okay, now you will be brought to this screen that says install. Once you click install, it's going to go ahead and install everything, and then it's going to automatically reboot the machine when it's done. So be prepared for that. So go ahead and hit install and let your machine reboot if needed. So now your machine should have rebooted, and we can come in here and say Control-Delete one more time. Now you see it says Marvel/administrator. Before it just said administrator, now it says Marvel/administrator. That means we're logging into a domain of Marvel as the administrator. So now your password that you've been using should still work. Go ahead and set that up, log in, and now you're logged in as the Marvel administrator of this domain. There's a lot of fun stuff we could start doing with this, but we're going to hold off until we actually get the other two machines set up that we need to. So in the next video, we're going to work on setting up those machines, and then we're going to tie it all together and start building out our lab and all of our features that we need to actually start attacking it. So I will catch you over in the next video.